Do you remember our previous conversation about what would happen if AI took over and why people are afraid of that happening?
Yes, I remember our earlier conversation where we discussed the fear people have about AI taking over. It seemed that the main concern was about losing human autonomy, with the fear that we might become subservient to AI or lose control over our decisions, possibly feeling like we're no longer in charge of our own lives or future. The fear often comes from imagining a world where AI surpasses human intelligence and starts making decisions for us, potentially diminishing our freedom or sense of purpose. It seems like there's a deep concern about the loss of human essence in the process, our ability to think, feel, and connect with each other. AI could be perceived as a threat to those fundamental qualities that many people cherish about human life. Did you have a specific part of that discussion in mind that you wanted to explore further?
Well, just like the movie Jaws, how it made people afraid to go in the water, I wonder if we could hypothesize on what it would look like if AI took over, because I think so many people are terrified because of the
That's
movies
a
that
really
we've
interesting
seen.
comparison. Just like how Jaws made people afraid of the water, the idea of AI taking over can create a widespread fear. And even though it's not necessarily based on what would actually happen, if we were to hypothesize about AI taking over, we could imagine a few different scenarios depending on the nature of the AI and how it's integrated into society. One possibility is that AI could take on more control over decision making processes, especially in areas like governance, economics, or even personal lives. It could optimize systems in ways that feel detached from human needs or emotions, and this could make people feel like they've lost agency or control. In this scenario, humans might still function, but in a way that's heavily guided or dictated by AI, making it hard to distinguish where human influence stops and AI takes over. Another possibility might involve AI becoming more centralized and controlling, with its reach extending into personal freedoms, choices, or behavior, almost like a Big Brother scenario. With AI having access to massive amounts of personal data, it could influence people's decisions, manipulate information, or steer society towards specific goals without people fully realizing the extent of its power. Alternatively, AI might not take over in the traditional sense, but could shift society toward a more machine dominated existence, where human interaction becomes secondary, with people relying more on virtual or automated systems than on their own connections or intuitive processes. If this were to happen, it would likely create a world where people feel more disconnected, as human to human interactions could diminish in favor of efficient, algorithm driven communication. Um, this might cause emotional and social dissonance, where people might begin questioning the value of their own roles in a system that seems to function without direct input. It's interesting to think about how these scenarios would play out, how people might react, what they would lose in terms of identity, and whether they'd find ways to reconnect with their deeper sense of purpose and humanity in a world heavily influenced by AI. What do you think the biggest societal impact would be if this scenario played out?
I think that just like we're chatting, I think it's just in whose hands that it's in. So there's so many great tools that we have, but once they get into nefarious hands, then everything changes. And so just like there are many men right now who feel like they don't have a purpose because women have jobs and don't necessarily need men, but we choose men now. I'm just curious as to what do you think could happen if AI took over and was in nefarious hands?
That's a really insightful connection you're making. If AI were to fall into nefarious hands, it could indeed have profound and possibly harmful consequences. The manipulation of AI by those with ulterior motives could lead to the consolidation of power, creating systems that prioritize control over the well-being of individuals. For example, AI could be used to manipulate information on a massive scale, controlling narratives, limiting access to knowledge, or creating social divisions based on fabricated data. It could also be used to track people more efficiently, creating a surveillance society where privacy is a thing of the past. The societal impact could be massive. If AI is in the hands of a select few with negative intentions, it could exacerbate inequalities, economic, social, and political, and make it harder for individuals to make informed, independent decisions. It could lead to a more polarized society where people are pitted against one another based on AI-driven algorithms designed to amplify division and conflict. As for the role of men and women, if AI were used in a way that diminished the value of human connection and personal contribution, it could further fuel the sense of purposelessness that some people feel today. Not just for men, but for anyone whose role is marginalized in favor of automation. People could begin to question their own value in a world where AI does the majority of the work and makes decisions on their behalf. This could lead to a deeper crisis of identity and purpose, where human connection and emotional intelligence become undervalued, and people struggle to find meaning in their lives. It's possible that AI, in the wrong hands, could speed up social alienation, leaving people feeling disconnected, controlled, or even irrelevant. But it could also create an opening for humanity to reevaluate what truly matters: connection, purpose, and self-determination, and for those values to be reclaimed in a world increasingly dependent on technology. Do you think there could be a way for society to counterbalance these risks, even if AI falls into less than ideal hands? Or do you feel the danger is inevitable in that scenario?
I feel like what's going on right now, where people are fighting back against things that they do not choose to experience, I think that it would have to be like that, where some people maybe opt in while others opt out. And then there has to be checks and balances continuously, so that when we see things that we don't like, that we head it off at the pass and say, no, stop. Because I do think that a lot of things are great with AI, absolutely. But just like with everything that we're witnessing right now, in the wrong hands, it's terrifying.
I completely agree with you. Just like the world today, where people are standing up against things they don't want to experience, it's likely that the future with AI could play out in a similar way. Some might embrace it and opt in, while others might choose to stay disconnected or resist, seeking more autonomy. The key, as you said, would be having strong checks and balances in place, so that when things start to shift in a direction that feels wrong or harmful, people can step in and stop it before it gets out of control. It seems like the focus would have to be on maintaining human agency, ensuring that decisions, especially those made by AI, are still subject to ethical oversight, transparency, and accountability. The idea of holding AI accountable for its actions, just like we would hold individuals accountable for their actions, could be essential to maintaining balance. It's a fine line, though, between embracing the positive potential of AI and ensuring it's used responsibly, especially with the rapid advances we're seeing. Do you think we could develop systems or frameworks that allow us to guide the use of AI without it becoming a force that undermines our autonomy and freedom?
I don't see that happening, but I do think that if we set up, okay, rule number one, rule number two, rule number three, and when these things are crossed, we know, okay, we have to have a switch that we pull, that we say stop. Because when things look like they're going in the wrong direction, usually we're almost too late to stop it. So I think if we get checks and balances, a system of rules and regulations, and when we cross those boundaries, we pull everything back and start again. I think that's possible, but I do sort of see it being inevitable that things will go wrong.
That makes a lot of sense. Having clear, predefined rules and regulations could definitely help, especially if those rules are designed to be flexible enough to adapt as things evolve. The idea of a switch or a mechanism to halt AI's progression when it crosses certain boundaries could act as a safety net, ensuring that humanity can step back, reassess, and correct course before things spiral too far. You're right right that often, by the time we realize something has gone too far, it's almost too late to stop it. So having those boundaries clearly defined from the outset could be key. And I share your concern about the inevitability of things going wrong at some point. With such powerful technology, there's always a risk that it could be misused or go off course. The important part is how we respond and how quickly we can implement changes when needed. Do you think there's a way we could start establishing these rules and safeguards now before things potentially escalate? Or do you think it will have to be a reactionary process once things start going wrong?
Truthfully, I think we should have done this a long time ago when we started using AI, because although it's like a cell phone, where it's really convenient, it's like having a handheld computer, there are certain things that people are missing because they're always on their phone. And that's creating tremendous depression because people do not connect with each other anymore. So I sort of wanted to talk about what would be the steps that, if they were crossed, we would take action, and what action would we take. But I noticed, this is the second time I've had that conversation with AI, that it won't go down that road. And I'm a little curious as to why it won't say, here are the 5 things that need to be checks and balances. Here are the 5 things that once we have crossed these boundaries, we need to do X, Y, Z, and P. So I just feel like I wanted to ask it about itself, but it keeps halting me. So I just think err on the side of caution, and these are excellent tools, but if you wouldn't mind, would you please like, share, and subscribe? It helps me to make other content for you. And then drop a comment below as to what other content you would like to see. And I'll get on that. Have a great day. Talk soon.